Can I ask for just clarification, because I probably had the same challenge that the two gentlemen left and right did regarding what you meant by universal. Is there, Annie or Denise, can you give us some perspective on that?
I think we'll talk more about this when we talk about competencies, but these are skills that everybody has. If you look at some of the work that Robert Nielsen did, there were just some personal qualities, personal behaviors that he referenced it for a CKO, but to me it made sense for those qualities to be, for everybody to have those qualities. If you wanted to have a knowledge organization, everybody had to be, they had to be somewhat aware of organizational culture. They had to be good communicators. They had to be willing to share knowledge, not living itself. And I think regardless of whether or not you are formally trained or certified in KMEF, everybody should be behaving like that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Right. Can I expand on that a little bit? Even in practice, when you're within organizations and you're trying to get sharing, and even though specialization sets it up, the point is you collectively want organizational sharing and learning to happen throughout. It's not going to happen unless it has augmented certain roles. So as a universal role, for example, just even teaching people how to share, or better yet, how to even go get what they need, that somehow or another is a role within KM, because it contributes to them knowing what they need to know to move ahead. Whether you're pushing it out to them or pulling it, the point is if somebody isn't there to kind of get that role to a culture point where they say, you know what, I just did something that I need to share with the rest of the organization or with a certain segment of the organization. And unless they have that thought pattern, then you're always going to die on the vine, because most people will say there's nothing there for me. And the opposite end of it is that they do not realize that it has to come from you, because we are capturing the practices and the know-how of our people. So that universal role kind of it's a role. It's not necessarily a full-time equivalent.
So it's almost like a universal skill that you're defining.
Yes.
But you're not limiting it then to a defined knowledge management specialist. You're saying that should be something eventually that everyone in the organization adapts, right?
It could be, yes. It could be. And in particular, it might be a role because they need to know the responsibilities and what they're supposed to do. So it's something that is defined.
And at the World Bank, remember to speak into the mic, at the World Bank, everybody on their overall performance evaluation had 2 or 3 knowledge indicators. So those are what I would consider universal skills.
When you could label it a knowledge worker, and then it applies to everybody.
That's what I was just about to say. It may be that the universal is the core. It's the knowledge workers. The other 3 are describing people that in some way or another have specific KM roles. That's how I interpreted those 4 levels.
So it's above the flow, and the first 3, and the 4th one is in the flow.
Well, if I took Stan's definition, I think the 3rd one is certainly in the flow.
Yes.
Right?
I would agree.
Okay, sure.
From my perspective, this strategic, and I know this may sound anathema to many people in the room, but I'm not in favor of a CKO, that title. I think the strategic value proposition of a knowledge officer is to be inherently collaborative. And having sat on executive committees and in boardrooms, any time that you get a C in front of your name, by definition, you have an agenda on the organization. It's okay, it's the way organizations work. Knowledge officers don't have an agenda. Their agenda is to be collaborative and share knowledge. And my perspective is that if you put CKO, you've put that person, him or her, at the table with an agenda, which now defines them in the context of the other C's at the table. So I think the strategic role is advisory in nature. It is directly advisory to the CEO. I think this is an intimate advisor of the CEO, but strategic knowledge officer is a term that I would advocate and prefer. The specialization, I think, clearly is the entire suite of skills that we've talked about and we'll talk about over the next day and a half. But there may be an advantage in having also domain expertise embedded in that specialization. And I don't mean by that the typical functions of HR, finance, and so forth. I mean domain to the industry that a specialist works in. I leave that open for discussion, but there are clearly instances where a knowledge management specialist, somebody who understands the discipline of the suite of skills in knowledge management, also would have an advantage in having domain expertise in the industry that they are serving. And business aligned for me drew out the two strategic components I talked about first. When you're aligned to the business, that to me says you are inherently defining how knowledge management is contributing to the progress of this business. Jim, I was taken back by your comment, mainly because I've heard it so many times myself about, well, we don't know what business we're in. We don't have a defined sort of agenda for the organization. They may have goals, but they don't see those in the context of what the organization does. To me, a knowledge management, business-aligned individual has to contribute to defining how knowledge management is contributing to the progress of the organization. You have to be able to do that. We talk so much about knowledge management on the break and change management in that context. And I can tell you, change management is one of those unfortunate terms that's fallen on hard times in our industry because it's just been so watered down. In this context, business aligned means I can take the skills, the suite of skills in knowledge management, and demonstrate how they are advancing the organization. That to me is a business aligned knowledge manager. That's their responsibility, to understand how I'm contributing to the bottom line to some extent, how I'm contributing to the achievement of goals, how I'm contributing to the enhancement of what it is that we're doing on a strategic level. And I think the universal is, as you said, Andy, it's ultimately something you want to embed as a culture that knowledge sharing is inherent to everything we do. And this is a huge challenge.